So for this week's assignment, I want to continue with the level that we were working on last week, which was the Old West fortress town, as inspired by the concept art from Desperados, as you remember. So use the same sort of images to sort of inspire you. If I were you, I'd also, especially for this, because I'm looking for some extra sort of inspired detail of more sort of lived-in spaces or variety here, to maybe search online for Old West towns or Mexican towns, Old Westerns, to try to find some inspiration for how you can make. Essentially, what I'm looking for is different districts throughout this city, so that it's easier to mentally map or to cognitively map this city into the player's head. So let me take a look at. Let me show you what I've sort of kind of done with my version of my assignment. So I sort of expanded out this idea of, okay, well, I've got my central sort of marketplace area, and I left that pretty much untouched. But then I decided let's build out sort of a district outside of the wall. And so, like I said a moment ago, what I'm looking for in this assignment is recognizable districts, maybe basically like four districts, 5 districts, that sort of thing, across your little town. And I'm not looking for nearly as much detail as I was for the sort of spatial cluster that we made of sort of this the marketplace that I made, or whatever space that you sort of made. I don't need a lot of like interiors and stuff like that. That was sort of an exercise when we were talking about exactly how to set up a spatial cluster. And I could imagine you building out more interiors and more detail into these spaces if you were actually making a production level. But for now, what I really want is just an understanding of how we break apart a complex space up into recognizable districts. How do we create edges between them that stand out and tell the player, hey, you're moving into a new area, keep things in mind, or sort of adjust your sort of mental map accordingly. How do we articulate paths and sort of use those to sort of show how to move from one space to another? How do we use landmarks, faraway landmarks, local landmarks, and immediate landmarks? How do we use elements of, or concepts of sort of simplicity and arranging or evoking primitives and things like that? So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've got here. So I expanded out. I started the spawn location outside of the town, and a town like this has a natural well-defined edge of inside versus outside the town with this sort of wall right here. So outside the town, I'm characterizing this as being pretty sparse and sort of desert-like. I've got this strong sort of pathway through here, leading the player's eye and pathway here. I want to, since this is a sort of a large area, and I don't want the player to feel like they have to sort of go to every corner of this, I'm keeping detail to where it's actually important. So as you can see here, there's detail from where I spawn all the way up to the gateway here, but there's not really any detail out over here. I don't want the player necessarily running over there. I feel I could just like fence this off or something like that, but that would sort of give the player a sense that like I'm really kind of hedging them in, and they don't really have a lot of choice here. What I'm telling them is essentially, you have a choice. You could run over there if you want, but there's not really anything to find. However, if they did turn back here to the left side, I have created some detail over here that will lead you to sort of a back entrance into the city. So I'll show you how that works in a moment. But from the start, let's see, just to like set up the different types of districts I've got essentially the outside sparse area. I've got my sort of marketplace centered around this church. I've got this area over here, which I'm characterizing by some basically a big landslide, and we'll go into actually play in that area. And then I've got this kind of more open sort of vegetation area in here with a like a cemetery, and over here this one isn't quite characterized as well, but it's kind of more of like a residential area. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And then up here is sort of the last stand area, so a little bit more of sort of a military sort of focus. So that's kind of basically the main sort of thing. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right. So I'm out here. I've got some objects in my way, some occlusion that keeps me from seeing that sort of entrance over there. Let's pretend I didn't see it though. So let's sort of head into this town. We've got this path sort of helping to sort of help put together this sort of mental map of these spaces. These towers right here, I'm trying to characterize as like you can't really sort of access them very much, but it's really nice being tall objects that you can sort of see them from different spaces and you can kind of help orient yourself. So I'm coming up to the wall and I'm crossing this sort of edge boundary. We've got a little bit of environmental storytelling here. It looks like this door, this gate has been forced open. So I've got one that's sort of a little bit off its hinges, and one that's sort of fallen right here. And advantage of sort of bringing me through a gate is that it sort of really forces me to sort of encounter this sort of first decision node. So right here, I've got sort of an upstairs that I could head down. I've got a right path right here, and I helped to try to articulate the fact that this existed from last week by putting these sort of vertical beams right here, and I've got this edge of this gateway right here that tells me that I'm entering a new area. We'll get to that in a moment. So, like I said, this marketplace area hasn't changed a whole lot. I still have sort of my faraway landmark, my nearby local landmark, and then sort of this immediate landmark of this wagon wheel. Let's head into this area back here. And like I said, I'm going into much less detail into these other districts just because I don't think it's worth our time at the moment. But I'm using these sort of gateway things to try to help articulate basically edges. Like I'm crossing a threshold into a new area. And this new area I've decided to characterize as just kind of a different arrangement of props, but using these sort of dirt piles and this sort of rock collapse with some grass and some extra trees. So it looks like this landslide might have happened a long time ago. So it's kind of like it's sort of nature's kind of taking things over again. This looks very sort of cramped, and it's not a very strong composition, but I've got this sort of single focal element that just kind of stands out of this like sort of red flag here. If the player happens to come back here, I think that I would probably I've got this one house that I've sort of built out so that you could come in here and probably find like some sort of treasure or something like that. But as we come back out here, I have this pinch point right here, which defines sort of another threshold of crossing an edge boundary into a new space. So now this is basically the backside of my church. I probably should have detailed that out a little bit more. And I've got this pathway that I probably should have articulated a little better, but essentially this path leading around the church. And then this sort of marketplace area. Last week, I just kind of had like a row of buildings here, and it just seemed kind of pretty boring. So what I did is sort of replace this with sort of an open space and used an edge feature here of a fence to sort of create like a boundary of like, okay, I'm entering a new zone here, and in this new area, I've got this large tree with a body hanging from it. So this is sort of my local focal point here, and kind of everything sort of leaning around to that. This is sort of a nice like straight edge down here. So this is sort of this sort of complicated shape of this organic shape right here is sort of made into kind of a square with a bit of a round circle up here. So that's kind of a primitive construction that I've put together here in order to make this space make a little bit more sense. I decided to put a nice like bridge up here, the bridge, and that's something we're going to talk about in a later lecture, just about affordability and how a bridge like this invites use. Our bridge generally isn't built in a game like this without saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool to be up there? So that's really sort of attractive up there. I have this small little scene of a sort of a little bit of a graveyard here. This pathway leads me up towards my goal. Oops. This is definitely not perfect platform jumping with this character here. Doesn't quite lead me up there, but I've got this like nice little nook and stuff like that. And I do, just for whimsy, I kind of put this like little extra little path here that would take me around to this special grave where I could maybe get some other sort of secret or something like that, and a nice little vista of the town. Let's head back over this way. All right, so almost at this tower, which sort of is dominating the sort of landmark of this area. And this leads me down to, actually gets me into the final area. I can't access the tower until I go actually into that final area, but let's just head down here first so we can talk about the other district in here. So like I said, crossing sort of this boundary, and I've decided to, in this district right here, I'm going to articulate the pathway, which is sort of these cobblestones right here, and a little bit more of sort of an overgrown area, and kind of, I was thinking kind of this residential sort of area where they sort of put banners over the place, and they've got like a little bit of a well there. Gotta admit, it's not a super strong identity for this particular space. As I come up here, I've got this sort of barricade where it seems like, okay, maybe they had some sort of invasion at this place, so they put this barricade up, and it blocks my access. But you know, if I am a prudent player, I can come around and figure my way through into my final district, which is this sort of final showdown, which is sort of characterized by kind of these stockades and stuff like that, and cover positioning, and of course our final sort of destination here, which is the final tower. And I guess you could call this last area right here sort of climbing elevation, a final sort of district area where we're sort of climbing here. I haven't really put a whole lot of detail work into here because, like I said, this isn't sort of a final playable level. But in fact, you can't even actually get up to the bridge up there. How disappointing! But you know, I generally, like I said, I try to build my levels with this concept of sort of districts and how they connect to one another. And I originally sort of built this with this sort of strong pathway that sort of leads me up. And this pathway right here, it was the correct pathway in mind. And then as I sort of built this space out and started making allowances for where can I start to make connections that don't sort of necessarily break the progression of this path. So right over here, I've got this sort of extra stairway that comes up. So this takes me back over sort of the rooftops of these buildings in the marketplace, but I can also continue this pathway up, and this will get me back up to the destination area. As I showed you, once I put in sort of the area over there with the cemetery and stuff, I wanted to create a connection that got me from back there up there. Otherwise, it would feel like this useless dead end. So that way, sort of, there's a pathway up that takes me back around this way. And then just to look again at, let's see, there we go. So there's this secret opening over here, which hopefully won't get me necessarily lost. I still understand that there's this sort of strong sort of edge boundary, this wall around the entire space. So I look over here, okay, there's no detail over there, I'm not interested. I head over here, hop through this hole, and this is a nice sort of composition from, you know, to sort of link my understanding of the inside of the wall, outside of the wall. We've got these towers that sort of help to sort of do that. Head over here. Now this district is the backside of that district with the dirt mounds and sort of grass, so that's why I want to continue that over here so that you understand exactly where you are, depending on if you encounter this first, second, or third, that sort of thing. So that way, it doesn't matter which way you enter into this city, you can experience it in a number of different ways. You can, but because it has sort of this strong focal element of this sort of tower as the destination, and because it has this strong sort of identity of district to district, we've got these strong pathways. We are using sort of specific spots like this, for instance, as a node where I am sort of setting up a composition for the player to sort of understand where they are relative to you know, the front gate. So that's pretty much what I've got. Good luck, and I will see you next week.